So you've been analyzing this stuff for a while, Vox.
Long time I've been doing this.
And where can people hear more about your stuff and follow this?
VOXNEWS. Vox News is where you can go.
This kind of hysteria that's sort of sweeping, as usual, the United States, not the world. But it's a hysteria the United States seems to
imbibe on it.
On hysteria.
Seeing a complete diminishment of all of our former rights and a complete clampdown, and it's getting tighter and tighter and tighter. Where you're tricked into all this stuff because it's for your safety, right? Few countries did fare better. China in particular. The ruling establishment has a lot of, they will stop at nothing to complete their toolkit of control, right? So one of the things that has been missing from the toolkit of total control has been quarantines and curfews, right? So now...
So we have to take stricter measures to regain full control, he said. So we've decided that chief among them will be a curfew.
Traveling to mainland France from 5 countries will have to quarantine for 10 days.
We'll need to test before they get on that plane, before they depart, and quarantine when they arrive in America.
Thousands of holidaymakers back from Spain being forced into a quarantine they weren't expecting.
Now, welcome to the new world in America, where you will be able to get on a bus, to go through a subway station. If you think that the procedures at the TSA are onerous and a little bit excessive, right? Guess this is coming to a bus depot near you. This is coming to it's a more invasive way. Now, one of the things I'd like to show to back up my my claims here. Here's a document from the Rockefeller Foundation. Rockefeller Foundation, right there. You can zoom in on that, where my finger is. It's called Scenarios for the Future of Development and International Development, the Rockefeller Foundation. All right? Okay, let's take a look at what they're saying here. This is something like a 50, 60-page document. I'd like you to go to page 18, if you can look at this up on the internet, but I'll read it off to you. It's called Lockstep. Lockstep. They're saying that they call it a scenario. These are scenario narratives, and they speak about it in the past tense. So they put out this scenario. Lockstep. A world top-down government control and more authoritarian leadership with limited innovation and growing citizen pushback. Okay, I'll read a little bit of it. In 2012, the pandemic that the world had been anticipating for years, nobody was anticipating a pandemic.
Bill Gates has helped to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria.
It is to take a new way of building vaccines called DNA RNA vaccines, and so cause an excess in a single year of 10 million deaths. Now clearly a big war could, and a pandemic, natural or created by bioterror.
Unlike 2009's H1N1, this new influenza strain originating from wild geese. They use some scenario.
Well, here's something we do know. The animals that carry coronaviruses, particularly bats, are the creatures at the center of this coronavirus outbreak.
Coronaviruses similar to COVID-19 have been found in bats and pangolins across Asia.
Pandemic-prepared nations were quickly overwhelmed when the virus streaked around the world. The pandemic also had a deadly effect on economies. You can see the agenda, just naked, raw, naked control agenda, written down, and it's anybody's guess how this becomes effectuated in real life. So, the pandemic also had a deadly effect on economics. International mobility of both people and goods screeched to a halt.
And potentially up to 10 years in prison.
Germany is imposing a travel ban on countries most affected by new coronavirus variants.
And President Biden is now banning travel from South Africa over concerns about the variant there and reimposing a ban on some 24 other countries.
Debilitating industries like tourism and breaking global supply chains.
There was an estimated 1 billion unsold hotel rooms in 2020. Well, this pandemic and the lockdowns that have followed were always going to take an incredible toll on the travel and tourism sector.
Which is what they want. They want a completely isolated world, right? And they want you at home in your house in front of the TV. Then they got you. Because once you watch the TV, they own your soul. Even locally...
Wait a second, we're on television, aren't we?
That's
time I
right.
checked, we're on television?
Well, this is, but...
It's a special show.
This is different, yeah. This is not... I mean commercial television, let's say. National. Yeah. Even locally, normally bustling shops and offices sat empty for months. Okay, so I love how they talk the past tense in 2010. Right? The pandemic blanketed the planet, Asia and Central America, where the virus spread like wildfire.
It sounds like the opening monologue of a disaster movie, right?
Exactly.
Over the opening credits as they show the disaster.
Sure. And they made it real.
They have something like this, a narration like this over the credits that sets you up.
Now listen to, here's the good stuff now. But even in developed countries, containment was a challenge. Now here's this one. I love this one. The United States' initial policy of strongly discouraging, in quotation marks, strongly discouraging citizens from flying proved deadly in its leniency. So they're saying, that...
No, keep going, read it. Just
proved deadly in its leniency. So they should have been tougher, right? Accelerating the spread of the virus, not just within the United States, but across borders. However, a few countries did fare better. China in particular. The Chinese government's quick imposition and enforcement of mandatory quarantine for all citizens, as well as its instant and near hermetic sealing off of all borders. Millions of lives, stopping the spread of virus far earlier than in other countries. So the message is we have to look towards the Chinese.
The world is watching Beijing. This morning, news that the recent outbreak there is under control. Eunice Yoon joins us right now. She's got more on this front. And Eunice, we're watching this pretty carefully just to see if these extreme measures are working.
The oppressive totalitarian Chinese regime as an example of what we need to be doing here. And of course, the ruling class here loves the Chinese regime because they have demonstrated to the ruling class the most efficient form of capitalism, which is authoritarian capitalism. So we have capitalism, but unfortunately we have this veil.
I get it.
We have this veil of democracy.
This is very interesting. This is continue on.
Okay. China's government was not the only one that took extreme measures to protect its citizens from risk and exposure. During the pandemic, national leaders around the world flexed their muscles, flexed their authority, and imposed airtight rules and restrictions.
We put India on the red list before other countries like Germany and Canada stopped flights from India. We have a strong policy of restrictions.
See the agenda.
Go.
Okay, from the mandatory wearing of face masks to body temperature checks at the entries to communal spaces like
that's what's happening right now.
But soon it's going to be like body.
It'll be at the subway.
Yeah,
is that what you're saying? We'll be going through this in the subway to get on buses and the subway, things
positively.
Like that.
And what this means though is don't think about having a cigarette, a joint on you, or basically you can't. This is a dragnet for everything. So if in order for you
in other words, just like with stop and frisk, this is ultimate stop and frisk.
This is the ultimate cavity stop and frisk, cavity search kind of thing. So basically what they're saying is they're building a system where every move you make, you got to go through them.
The MDR, the Massive Data Repository,
They called it that for a reason. This was not the targeted data repository. This was not something that was designed just to watch this person or that person. It's because they were ingesting everything, everywhere, and saving it in case it might be of interest later.
Even after the pandemic faded, this more authoritarian control and oversight of citizens and their activities stuck and even intensified.
Furthest person you will ever get from a conspiracy theorist. It is always, in my mind, a cock-up, not a conspiracy. And when people say, oh, there's some big plan to turn us into China and they're going to watch everything that we do, I sort of roll my eyes and think, yeah, put the foil tin hat on. There are some developments in the last couple of days that are incredibly worrying for me, and I think should be worrying an awful lot of my listeners as well. Let's just go back to the beginning here. There was talk about having a vaccine passport for us to be using domestically, and then there was talk about having a vaccine passport, a way of proving your vaccine status to be able to travel abroad. I don't have an issue with that second one. You download the NHS app, it's going to show you've had your vaccines. Not so much an issue. I'd rather have it on a piece of paper, frankly, but I can understand that. A lot of people saying they wouldn't have it for domestic use. The government said, oh, these are separate things, don't worry. The development in the last couple of days tells us that's not the case. What's happened?
And if the question is there a big plan for COVID passes? Yes, there absolutely is. I mean, it's just irrefutable now. And I actually think it's been in place for many, many, many months. And the government has been barefaced lying about it. And ID, and there's a digital ID framework being drawn up at the moment. They're supportive of facial recognition technologies. I mean, there are a lot of, if you're looking for Minority Report or China-style policies, wow, we've got an awful lot of them.
That's the whole point. So they're going to get rid of...
Didn't that happen already with 9/11?
Of course.
9/11 was how many, 14 years ago, and we still have all these draconian
So
rules.
they're going to put the body cavity
USA
searches
Patriot
in.
And all
That's right. So in order to get to a supermarket, you got to have a body cavity search, and then when there's no more Ebola, well, you know what? We kind of like this way because we have an complete infrastructure of a control grid, like my friend down in Austin, Texas, Alex Jones says, control grid. Okay. And yes,
Alex Jones is a controversial figure.
Well, you may not like a lot of what he says, and I think that a lot of his stuff is a little bit, I think the way he delivers it can very much turn people off. However, he is hitting the salient points, let's say. Now, even after the pandemic, in order to protect themselves from the spread of increasingly global problems, from pandemics and national terrorism to environmental crisis and rising poverty, leaders around the world took a firmer grip on power. Well, what the hell would rising poverty have anything to do with imposing strict citizen controls?
Universal basic income is a brilliant idea, especially in view of the failures of the welfare state.
Somewhere in the near future, physical money will become like these. In other words, hard cash will disappear. It will become electronic, transferred by things like these. So what's the rush to get rid of cash? And what's the cost? Digital payments aren't just easy, they're neat.
It becomes easier for governments to monitor tax evasion and fraud, so we will have less of that going on.
There's a downside.
Let's assume, for example, that a country that used to be democratic, where people were not paying too much attention about safeguarding their privacy, becomes undemocratic and someone wants to control citizens more closely. They will try to infer from what you buy your political leanings. But
very sloppy stuff here. At first, the notion of a more controlled world gained wide acceptance and approval. sorry. Nobody likes this stuff. So they're just saying it.
Continue on.
No, I have to provide analysis.
Only because we only have 5 minutes left, so that's
Oh my God, okay. Citizens willingly gave up some of their sovereignty and their privacy to more paternalistic states in exchange for greater safety and stability. I mean, that's just a complete naked contradiction to the famous saying that if you think you're going to give up a little bit of your security, I mean, if you're going to give up your freedom for security, you're going to get neither. That's the long-standing thing. And here what they're doing is they're not even ashamed or embarrassed to absolutely say the exact opposite. They're saying, yes, we all want to give up our privacy and sovereignty for more stability and security and stability. So you don't get that. When you give it up like that, you get the shaft.
We're speaking with Vox, by the way, from Vox News. He's a regular on this show, contributor, and he loves to come here and scare the hell out of us, and he's doing a good job of it. And I hope with the season of Halloween approaching, we could all get into the spirit of terror that's being created, and by possibly, according to Vox, our own government. So very interesting. What do you have for us?
I guess the main thing to finish off this show is this: that they want to get more control, and it's going to be curfews and quarantine. So what I'm saying is that unless the American people start to get some new way to revolt, a new way to organize, new way to protest, unless we can break through the apathy, because that's what we have here, then it's going to be a slave state here. The ruling class doesn't seem to have too much resistance. They're getting everything on their Christmas shopping list, where you're tricked into all this stuff because it's for your safety, right? And if you want to have a probe and make sure you got to check your pockets, make sure you don't have anything incriminating on you before you go out, and when you step out of your house, you want some police there to monitor and see what you're doing. If that's the world you want to live in, be apathetic, don't do anything. You're going to get that world very soon. It's coming your way, definitely.
Mm-hmm.